All right, so Star Wars Battlefront. Now, I didn't buy Star Wars Battlefront for one simple reason. It did not have a single player campaign to play. I love the single player in both the original Battlefront games, 1 and 2. The ones on PSP were really good. They actually did a really good job of focusing on either original Star Wars stories or Star Wars side stories that maybe a lot of people weren't familiar with, but now they get to experience them in the form of a game. And I mean, come on, we're talking about Star Wars. The story of Star Wars is, I think, the most interesting thing to most fans. And with this announcement, um, Star Wars Battlefront had its campaign cut to release in time for The Force Awakens. Now, I liked Force Awakens. I saw it, thought it was a great Star Wars movie. Um, but what was so interesting to me is that I saw that, and I kind of flip flop on this. I don't know if I can actually believe that. The game doesn't have a whole lot of content as it is. It seems like most of the game is going to be DLC. Like you're going to get more DLC than you're actually going to get on the disc. So they're kind of developing all of that after the fact, after the game has been released. And to me, it's just like a single player campaign. You should start with that, especially with a Star Wars property game. You should, and Battlefront, the new Battlefront takes place during the trilogy. You could, honestly, I don't think anyone would have complained if you had simply done something similar to the old Star Wars, where you basically just you're you're partaking in battles that were in the original trilogy movies, but you're just playing them from a different point of view. I don't think anyone would have complained about that. But as it stands now, there's really not much you can do with it offline except play through a few missions, and that's it. Um, and I think that's a real shame is that we don't have any kind of uh, campaign for the game. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this kind of goes along what I said about Street Fighter V last week. It's just games like these. With Street Fighter, your story could be a little bit shorter. With Battlefront, I think the story would have been a little bit longer than that because it's a shooter game, not a fighter game. But I agree with you. The story mode for a game, especially a shooting game, because there's always a story behind a shooter. Like, or at least there should be. Otherwise, it's just like you just have like Group A is fighting Group B because I don't know, one of them stole the other's lunch table or something. It's like why? I mean, clearly we know why these two factions are fighting in Star Wars. Like the movies tell us all that, and the previous games told us that. But it would have been cool to have a story mode to go along with this. When I first heard that the Battlefront game was coming out, I thought it was going to also I thought you were going to follow the main characters from The Force Awakens because I was told that this is supposed to take place during that time, and I got really excited about that because not only would you see these characters in the movie and get to know them, you'd also get to know them a little bit better, maybe in the game, which would have been really cool. And the fact that this is just also DLC is just why? It's like that shouldn't be a thing. At least with Street Fighter, it's going to be free. From the way that you make it sound, you're actually gonna have to pay for the story, which is like it's the same problem that I have with Destiny. Is like it's a great game. Um, Going into it, I loved playing the multiplayer and like whatever story there was at first. But to make someone pay for your story is just dumb. I don't think you should ever do that. If that's something that you're planning on doing, I doubt any big gaming companies are listening to this since this is their second episode. But if there are, and you're planning on doing this, just don't. There's no point. it's a dumb thing, and it makes your fans again like not buy the game. Like I also didn't buy the game, but for a few more reasons. Just like the multiplayer wasn't as big as it used to be. Um, they did do a couple of things different, which I thought, um, compared to the other Battlefront games, were better. Like the different weapons and the loadouts. I thought it was cool that you could control that instead of having to choose a specific character. Um, but not a lot of maps, not a lot of game types. I guess the game types I don't really have a huge problem with because there are plenty of first-person shooters with game types that are just like it's just the same thing, but with like a tiny little bit of a difference, which is dumb. You know, don't work on 16 different game types. Work on maybe like six or five that are good. Um, but yeah, I, I, I wanna, I wanna play it, and um, I wanted to be excited for this game, but just hearing that as their excuse, like they wanted to have it released with the movie, like that's dumb. I don't see that as an excuse for your game not being as great as it could have been.
And especially since it really didn't tie into the movie
No.
at all. Like you had there was like I think the first DLC that came out. It had the planet that Ray was on, um, but that didn't come out until a few months later. So to me, that excuse of oh well we had to time it with the movie, they were developing this for a long time um, before it came out. And to me, it's like, well, if you had started with the story, get your gameplay elements in place, and then start with the story, and then you work on multiplayer and all that, those design aspects, they would have had plenty of time and they would have gotten it done.
Yeah.
But they just decided not to.
They just released a multiplayer game.